Everyone, thanks for joining the webinar. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Business Agility New Zealand. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Beth Gervase. Beth's talk, The Godfather Effect, Mafia, Wisdom for Cultivating Communities Work, promises to be an intriguing exploration of how unexpected sources can inform our professional practices. So I've had the privilege of seeing Beth's community building skills in action in our own Business Agility meetup. And her ability to build connections and create a sense of belonging within our own group has been impressive. And I'm sure that is echoed in all the organisations she works with. Beth's background is as colourful as it is diverse. Originally from the desert southwest in the US, she now calls Auckland home. Her journey from the American Southwest to New Zealand is just one chapter in a life story that seems to embrace change and challenge. Beth's mantra, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. I can't help but wonder if this philosophy is somehow tied to her Mafia heritage. Beth, perhaps you can shed some light on that connection during your talk. Please join me in welcoming Beth Gervase.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that warm introduction. And thank you all for joining this morning, this beautiful Friday morning in Auckland. We were just commenting on how miserable it is out there. But and yeah, I really do appreciate you taking the time. I know some of these timings are challenging, especially if you have kids in school and all that stuff. But let's get into it. The talk will be about, I think it's about half an hour. I gave this talk at JAFAC earlier in the year. And so if you were there, apologies. But if everyone could go on mute, and then we'll have Q&A after. So yeah, we'll just get started. So I'm going to share my screen. Now, we did try this earlier, so let me just see if I can get it to work. Beth in technology, anyone who knows me know that's a challenge. All right, so hopefully you can see that screen. All right, well, good morning. Look, I'm sure you're all asking yourselves, what can we possibly learn from the Mafia to help us cultivate communities? So hopefully by the end of the talk, you'll understand where I'm coming from. Just screen. Now, this quote from Tony Soprano highlights just one aspect of building a strong sense of community, which is support systems, right? The same is true for organizations. How our employees feel about how they feel supported goes a long way to making or breaking community at work. But what is community? Now, the root word from Latin is communis, and that means common or shared. And geographic location doesn't have to be physical. Look, we're all here today, right? Technology connects us with people anywhere in the world. But the essence of a community lies in the shared connection or bond between its members. Now, community is also an accelerator for happiness. They're inseparable. It's about caring for others and allowing others to care for us. Now, in this context, how many communities do you belong to? You can put it in the chat, have a think, but is it like 1 to 5, 6 to 10? Maybe more than 10 or more than 20. Try to see if you can see the chat. There we go. Yeah, 20 plus, right? Yeah, exactly. Nice. Look, when I did this exercise, I counted 24 different communities. Now, communities may form based on common interests, but they are built on trust and safety. Now, this is especially true in my caving and diving communities because I'm literally putting my life in someone else's hands. But trust and safety doesn't have to be tied to life and death. And Burning Man is a great example of this. If you don't know what Burning Man is, You can Google it, but don't Google it on your work computer. Now, I participated in this event long before internet and social media access were allowed, but it was understood that what happened at Burning Man stayed at Burning Man. So, and after moving to New Zealand, I became part of the Agile community, first with Assurity as a consultant, and then with Agile Auckland and the business agility meetups. And I even found an amazing community at Pacifica, which is like a high rise in the Auckland CBD. The point is, you can find community in the most surprising places. You just have to be open to it. But there is one community not mentioned here, and it was a community that was part of my childhood, but one we weren't allowed to talk about. Now, this elaborate wedding took place 1 month after the stock market crash in 1929, which was the start of the Great Depression. In the center are my grandparents, John and Rose, and on either side of them are Russell Buffalino and his wife, Carrie. The Buffalinos are also godparents to my Uncle Jimmy, who is the youngest of my grandparents' 5 boys. Now, does the name Buffalino sound familiar to anybody? If you've seen the movie The Irishman, you'll know that name. So The Irishman came out a couple years ago. It's a movie and it's based on a book by Charles Brandt called I Heard You Paint Houses. Now, I heard you paint houses is Mafia speak for I heard you make people go away permanently. And the story is how mob boss Buffalino, who is played by Joe Pesci in the movie, put a hit on Teamsters union leader Jimmy Hoffa. And this became one of the most enduring and captivating unsolved mysteries in the US. Now, during our childhood, we all knew something was going on with the family. There were always whispers of Grandpop and his time in New York. Like most Italians, my family's ancestors immigrated to the US and they landed in New York. They settled in upstate in Buffalo, which was right on the Canadian border. Now, during Prohibition, the Mafia viewed this area as a prime location to bring in alcohol from Canada. And Buffalino laughingly told the story to my uncle of how he remembered my grandfather in his wedding tux, cleaning out the milk jugs to smuggle in alcohol for this wedding. So today I'm going to share how the threads of my Mafia heritage influenced my passion for seeking and creating community. Now, this is my family, circa 1978. I know, just hold the laughter about the groovy outfits. I grew up just outside of Washington, D.C., and it was a typical suburban neighborhood. My grandparents, aunts, and uncles and cousins all lived within a few blocks of us. Our house was the central hub of activity for the neighborhood, with all of our friends coming over to play hide and seek and kick the can. And when I was a kid, on the porch culture was the norm all across America. Families hung out on our front porches, and all of the children were raised by the collective. We didn't need cell phones. Everybody always knew where we were. It sounds pretty idyllic, right? I definitely felt connected and part of something bigger. This was my community. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. My grandfather's involvement with Buffalino in that life definitely influenced the way he raised his 5 boys. My father was the oldest of that family. And that, in turn, shaped the way my father ran his family. Now, if you're familiar at all with the Mafia culture or seen any of the countless movies or shows, Godfather, Casino, Sopranos, you know it's a boys' club. All the power is held by men. The women were there to have kids, keep a good home, and support their men. Now, being the youngest girl in this family, it was rough, especially after all my sisters moved away to go to uni. I was left alone with my mother to take care of my father and brothers. And my father's strict rules kept me away from my friends and activities outside the house. My world, my community began to shrink. I knew I had to escape. And as soon as I was able, I packed up my things and left. And I never went back. I went against the family in my father's eyes, so going back wasn't an option. Unlike other communities where you can move in and out, some communities are more rigid, which brings us to the Mafia. Now, the Mafia, it operates outside of legal and ethical boundaries, but at its heart, the Mafia is a community. And there are 4 principles that form the basis for any community. The Mafia excels at creating a sense of loyalty and belonging. There's a camaraderie among its members. Loyalty is not optional, and it is the cornerstone of their community. This loyalty is enforced through strict codes of conduct and traditions, sealed through blood oaths, pins, rings, and other symbolic gestures. It's a brotherhood. Once you're accepted, you're family, and you are in for life, as long as you don't do anything to go against the family. A big part of communities is that they are a support network for their members. In the Mafia, that support doesn't stop at geographical borders, but it spans across the globe. Now, this may come as financial assistance, protection of territory, or partnering in illegal activities, like painting houses. And in most organized communities, there is a clear hierarchy in leadership, with leaders or a committee at the top who make decisions and oversee the group's activities. In the Mafia, this leadership is based on power, fear, and intimidation. And a lot of the time, you don't even see the real leader. Delegates handle communication and give orders to shield the boss at the top. And the Mafia definitely creates a shared identity and purpose that unites its members. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a brotherhood. Their purpose is to protect what they have and grow their criminal empires. More power, more money, more territory. Most members start out as soldiers or pawns and work their way up to running their own crews. Now, not everyone ascends through the ranks, but this doesn't affect your identity in the community. Now, do any of these resonate with you? Does your organization have similar principles? Now, the methods may be different, I hope, but some of these community forming ideals might be the same. So let's look at how we can leverage these concepts to create strong communities at work. Now, what can companies do to create a sense of loyalty and belonging? Now, I really don't want to take a blood oath or swear fealty, but promoting open communication is key, right? Communication is so important, and it comes from the same root word as community. We can encourage open and transparent communication where employees feel safe sharing ideas, feedback, and concerns. In the New World of Work report, Skills in the New World of Work report published by Scrum Alliance and the Business Agility Institute earlier this year, the top human skill continues to be communication. Communication is more likely to pay off than any other skill. So we really need to help our people understand that. Look, we need to acknowledge and celebrate the contributions of individual employees and teams. Recognize achievements, milestones, and efforts to create a culture of appreciation and mutual respect. Now, these don't have to be grand gestures. A simple thank you is just as valuable. But we tend to forget that we need to celebrate, right? We're always moving on to the next thing. So take the time, celebrate, recognize, and reward those contributions. And to help people get that sense of belonging, we have to create that welcoming and inclusive work environment where all the employees feel valued and respected. Now, we need to encourage diverse perspectives and experiences to enrich the community. Now, this is about diversity of thought, not just race, culture, sexual orientation. Encourage differing viewpoints and ensure every voice is heard. Simon Sinek famously says that in meetings, make sure everyone speaks once before anyone speaks twice. And how can we support our people so they don't just survive, but thrive? We need to encourage collaboration, which is creating that collaborative work environment where employees are encouraged to work together, share knowledge, and support each other in achieving common goals. We have to provide these opportunities for cross-departmental collaboration and teamwork. Just break down those silos, right? And don't forget to support your teams and individuals with communities centered around their disciplines, chapters, guilds, communities of practice. There's many different ways to do this. It's also important to facilitate social connections. I think, especially after COVID, where we're so used to being at home and in our little bubbles, right? I know at ANZ, we're getting better about this. I was just at a year-end celebration yesterday, actually, so this is really timely, but we should be organizing those social events, team building activities, and networking opportunities to allow employees to connect on a personal level outside of work. We need to bring back humanity to the office, fostering those friendships and camaraderie to strengthen the bonds within the community. And we all know feedback is a gift. Unfortunately, it's the gift nobody wants to open. But we have to make feedback part of our organizational DNA. As a leader, we should continuously solicit feedback from our employees about their experiences and be willing to adapt based on their input and make everything transparent. We have improvement boards at ANZ. This is where we identify improvements through retros and PIRs and feedback sessions. And we capture everything in our tool, our workflow tool, Jira, to action, escalate, and create accountability. Our mantra at work is we improve together, we succeed together. Now, in a perfect world, organizational structures would flatten, reducing hierarchy and improving flow. But here are some things we can do now as leaders, or you can hold your leaders accountable for, to create community at work. Empathetic leadership involves understanding, acknowledging, and responding to the emotions and experiences of your people. It's prioritizing their well-being, people over process. Let go of control and be vulnerable. Allow people to bring their whole selves to work. Don't expect people to leave emotions at the door. Do you have colleagues that are completely different at work than in a social setting? I can't imagine how exhausting that must be. Authentic leadership builds trust, which is the foundation for strong communities. Now, I think we have all heard of Dan Pink's autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Now, we can help with mastery through the support networks centered around disciplines, and I'm going to share some ideas around purpose shortly. But what about autonomy? Whenever I use that word at work, it really scares our leadership teams, and it just conjures up images of people doing whatever they want, right? And I have this visual of thinking of a children's birthday party after the cake is served, right? Everyone's just running around doing whatever they want. To create strong teams or community, we as leaders need to be relentless on achieving alignment across the organization to achieve our common purpose. And then we need to push the decisions down to where the work is being done. It's our job to remove barriers through alignment and give our employees agency to deliver, letting go of control to break that cycle of learned helplessness. I call it killing the baby birds. And this is also so important, right? Let's get out of our offices, come down from the executive floors, and really connect with our people. Go to where the work is. If your organization has teams using agile frameworks, The opportunities are already there. Go to a stand-up, attend sharing and caring sessions, schedule skip levels to encourage your leaders to do the same. No more whitewashing and filtering of information. Let's get real. Let's get transparent. Now, what I've seen in my varied career is, as Andy is kindly alluded to earlier, but organizations tend to focus only on the brand identity for our customers. But what about our brand identity for our employees? Can we please stop calling employees resources? At Nike, everyone is an athlete. At Disney, everyone is a cast member. Now, creating that shared identity can bring community to your culture. This is number one, right? Establish clear goals, values, and a shared purpose that align with the organization's mission and vision. Communicate these to all employees to create that sense of common direction and identity. Now, I'm not talking about posters on a wall. I'm talking about the North Star. Do you know your organization's North Star? Are you all working toward it together? That's that shared goal and values. The clear roles and accountabilities, I run a lot of workshops at work, and this is the number one thing I hear at our organization, is that there's a real lack of role clarity, right? We have to make sure everyone understands not just what their role is, but also how they are expected to interact with others. What is their place in the community? And we need to start holding people accountable, addressing those bad behaviors immediately, and ensuring there are consequences. Now, not mafia consequences, but one person can take down an entire team. What are you willing to tolerate? Tolerating bad behavior and not holding people accountable for their commitments sends a clear signal to the other employees. Why should they care? One of my favorite questions to ask, and I do this at the end of every workshop, is that thing, that decision, that behavior, that interaction, that language, bringing us closer to the organization we want to be, or dragging us further away? And language is so important, right? Just like communication, shifting language from me to we. This is paramount. Language is paramount in making everyone feel like they are part of something bigger than themselves. Removing all language and behavior that creates the us versus them in your organization can go a long way to fostering a strong sense of community. As a leader, ensure everyone feels involved. Ask, what have I missed? Is there a different perspective? Encourage dissent and practice. David Marquet has a great system for this, those dissent cards. We just need to start practicing giving those alternate opinions. Ask for and offer feedback early and often. Admit when you've made a mistake. All these things tell employees we are in this together. And we need community now more than ever. I know this slide's a little bit busy. I will share the deck, and we are recording this, but we need community not just at work, but in every aspect of our lives. This data is from the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report for 2024. This is where they annually identify and analyze the most pressing global risks facing the world. These are the things that negatively impact a significant portion of global GDP, population, or natural resources. Now notice the 2-year outlook. These things are already happening. We can't afford to wait for another cyclone or pandemic to force us into cooperation and connection. And this year's report shows a significant increase in the interconnections of all these risks, transcending borders and requiring coordinated international efforts to mitigate. The world community must come together through collaboration, collective action, and resource sharing and knowledge exchange to address these most pressing issues and challenges facing humanity. And I'll wrap up with this. I love this quote from Denise Hamilton. It's from her book called Indivisible. In that book, she shares the story about how a diverse community in Los Angeles, facing challenges with gentrification, immigration issues, and racial tensions. And at the heart of the narrative is the theme of interconnectedness of individuals within a community and the power of solidarity in overcoming adversity. In a world where people are increasingly divided, our strength lies in our unity. Together, we are indivisible. And it sums up my life. After losing my family community, I have always tried to join or create new communities to be a part of, to feel connected and a sense of belonging. It's been my focus of not just my personal life, but my professional life as well. It's why I'm so passionate about creating and nurturing great teams to form connected communities and organizations. So now I put it to you. What will you do today to help create community at your office? Now, what about the next 2 weeks? What about the next 2 months? I'm asking that you take a chance, connect, commune, and realize we are all in this together. One great, big, fabulous community. Thank you.
Okay, do we have questions for Beth? I'm sure that there was some few points along the line that it's okay.
Just clapping hands.
Oh, cool. Oh, okay.
I was going to say the same thing. I enjoyed it at Jaffic and I enjoyed it again this morning, Beth. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for showing up. Appreciate it.
Anyone else got any thoughts or challenges?
I'm going to go a bit out on a limb here and share something. I haven't been bringing my authentic self into the workplace very much. And I've understood only quite recently that's because I'm pretty much mildly autistic. So I have high-level autism and I mask a lot. And so a lot of the stuff I do in the workplace takes more effort, more cognitive load, and I get very tired from the social interaction. I get very worn out from that kind of stuff. I can do it, and I can mask very well. But the community side of connectivity is something I find very, very difficult. And it's not something I would naturally do. I'm learning now that my natural tendency is more towards one-on-one engagement, and I can put my mask on, but my mask is my way of actually being able to operate in that team presentation. I can stand in a room full of people and do a presentation, all those kind of things, but at the end of it, it's really takes a lot from me, and I have to, at the moment, I'm still keeping a lot of my I'm still a little bit inauthentic in that, and it's quite hard. It's quite hard to do, and people might not even realize, as I didn't, that that's who they are until quite late in life, and it can be a challenge.
Yeah, look, and thank you for sharing. And it is, right? And it's, you can have your community of one or two, or, I think, and having that place for resilience, right? So look, I have to hide energy, people take energy, right? And so I have my resilience strategies in place, and it's especially in roles like us, like we're talking all the time and dealing with like heaps of people, and as long as you can have your safe space to go, it's fine. But I think like I said, your community can be small. It can be 1, 2 people, but I think the more we trust, the bigger your community can be. And it's hard. I agree. I mean, moving to New Zealand I didn't know anybody. And so I really just built it up kind of one person at a time. So I get it. And I really appreciate you sharing. Thank you, Guy. There's no Mafia questions. I mean, I'm disappointed. Like, everyone's afraid to ask. My dad, we weren't allowed to talk about it. My dad passed away a couple years ago, and then then we could all lift, the lid came off, and it was such a relief, to be fair, because we all knew we weren't allowed to talk about it when we were kids, but it wasn't. We're not dumb, right? Like, we knew what was going on. You don't raise 14 kids without help, right? Let's be honest. So, yeah.
I find it sounds just so exciting. I think I don't know anybody else who's got such a background, but it's so fascinating, because it's so unknown, and yeah.
Yeah, especially here in New Zealand. I mean, in America, especially on the East Coast, it's pretty typical. And my dad was very, very charming and dynamic, and he knew everybody, and it's just one of those. And I'll never forget when I saw The Irishman. I sat in the theater. I was like, this is so familiar, and I was telling my friend, I'm like, this is really weird. Like, I feel like I know these people. Because my grandfather drove for Russell Buffalino, so he's not the one in the movie, because that was after Buffalino moved to Pennsylvania. But in New York, my grandfather drove for him, so it was all very, very familiar. So yeah, really funny.
Well,
So,
for European, I think we probably think about Italy when it's about Mafia most.
Yeah.
Not only, but yeah.
Yeah, my grandparents are from Sicily, so.
Oh yeah, that's the
The heart.
So, Beth, what resonated with me when I heard this at Jaffak was about your grandfather, and he was just a taxi driver, so he's not high in the hierarchy; he's towards the bottom.
Right.
But he had a sense of belonging because he knew the whole family would look after him. He'd always be safe, whoever he was given a lift to.
That's right.
And I could resonate and align that with the way we want to be at work. That wherever you are in the organisation, you know that the whole company has your back.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's important, because some of us, don't feel like that, right?
Yeah.
There's cliques even within an organization, and there's that hierarchy, but I think as leaders, it's our job to create that sense of belonging and have that shared purpose. I proposed this to ANZ last year. I was like, why don't we just all call ourselves bankers, or let's have a shared identity, because it's so divided, not divided, but you know what I mean? Like, everyone's kind of doing their own thing. So yeah.
What this has really enforced for me is the importance of designing and cultivating the communities that you want, because they will form regardless. So let's make sure we're forming the communities that we want to exist and we want people to be part of.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about that inclusivity, right? So and that's what I've always tried to do. I really tried to do that with Agile Auckland. I wanted that to really turn into a big community, and it did. I think it's still going, so very proud of that work. But I've done that with kind of everything. I'm a doer. Like, I go in and, like, I've always been, I'm going to join the social committee. I'm going to go do this, and like, typically I'm the membership chairman of organizations, because I'm always just grabbing people off the street, so yeah. And it's self-serving, right? It's because I need that sense of community for sure. And that's I think why I've been able to move around and move to different organizations a little bit more fluidly than other people. But
that sense of community is quite interesting, Beth. I really enjoyed what you presented. It's slightly different perspective from our side as we're going. The company I'm working with, we're going through what we call a startup to grow up phase.
Oh, wow.
And some of that sense of family and communities actually impeding some tough decisions being made or being implemented. So this is, yeah, I'm seeing it from my perspective at the moment in a slightly different way, but it's very interesting to think about it. Yeah, how that's that sense of family is good and it's comforting, but also it can hold you back in some senses. Yeah.
Well, look, even families have tough conversations, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't have kids, but you're in your teenage years, right? Like they need a little discipline. They need a little, I don't want to say a smack, but that's how we were raised. But so look, it is pushing through those challenges, right?
It's so easy now, Beth, raising teenagers. There's just a button on the app that denies them everything, and life is 10 times easier. Trust me. My kids know I control their iPhones, their finances, and everything, all off my little device.
There we go. Nice. Using technology. I like it. No, but like that startup, you're right. I mean, and that startup to growth, right? That is one of the most challenging things businesses go through, right? Because you want to still maintain that family, but that's where the common goals come in, right? We're all in it together. So if everyone understands what that North Star is, who we're trying to be when we grow up, you can take people on the journey and still be supportive and have that sense of belonging and all of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
So I have a question that I'd be interested to get other people's thoughts on as well. So you talked here that one of the things that you constantly hear in your organization, and don't worry, I hear it in mine too, is this need for clear roles and accountabilities. And I sort of, I've heard that talked about, but I've never seen it well implemented, because I think there's a tension to my mind between that and, I guess, the flexibility, agility, or whatever we want to talk about, that we don't want to box people in too much either. And in Agile, we talk about, cross-skilling and multi-skilled, and then we talk about skill-based organizations and all of this stuff. So it's sort of, I think, a tension in this as well, between this clarity, this need for clarity, so that things don't get dropped or duplicated or waste comes in, but not at the expense of, where people is boxed in, like that's just who I am and that's what I do and that's all I do. And I think that's always the challenge I see in any time we have that, is how we actually do that in a way that actually doesn't box people in and prevent them from actually using all of their skills.
Yeah. So for us, and you're right? We don't ever want to say, this is your job description, you're only doing this, right? That's where that all other duties as assigned comes in. But for us, where the tension is that we call them improvements instead of constraints. I'm just trying to use the better language, but the things that are holding people back are not being actioned, and the accountability isn't sitting at the right level, right? So everything is typically pushed down to the teams, but the teams don't have control over people, the team size and funding and all that stuff. So what I'm trying to do is alleviate some of that pressure off of the teams, and I talking about circles of control, right? If it's in your control, you own it. If you have influence over it, it goes up a level, and then having that accountability, right? So leadership teams, and then ultimately our exec team as well, right? Because some of the things are big that only the exec can action. So that's really what it is. It's not about that day to day, because again, cross-functional teams, I mean, we're still trying to get that sorted as well, right? Because we still have those mindsets, those individual mindsets of like, no, I'm not going to, devs and testers, I'm not going to test, that's a tester's job and whatever. But so we're trying to solve that, but the bigger picture is really about where those improvements sit and the actions. Because like I said, as leaders, it's our job to get things out of the way. So I make all that transparent, and I put the accountability where it sits. Using Kanban, we're using the workflows to do it, to action those improvements. I know, Silke, that was just for you.
Nice.
So Andy, what you explained is something I see as well. So many clients struggle with people's accountability, and they say, how can we get people to become accountable? And it's a dilemma, because if it's all top down, then it's rigid and it's brittle, and it's not adaptive either. So people say, well, I'm not accountable for that. So my thinking is it's all about setting a real clear mission and having people enroll into that mission, because then you may have an explicit accountability, but ultimately you're motivated by achieving the mission. And I think that's where a lot of companies fail, because they don't have a clear mission, or at least it's not well disseminated to everybody.
Yeah, that North Star. That's right. Or
Yeah.
competing missions, right?
Yeah.
This one wants this, and this one wants this, and
The hierarchy of missions.
that's it. That's, you know, and well, look, when it's the reward, the level of reward will determine the level of cooperation, right? So where those rewards sit, however your organization is organized in that way, whatever its KPIs or scorecards, right? That will influence and determine the level of cooperation. So it does have to start up here. One team, one dream, all, you know, I use all the Bethisms, you know, people give me a hard time about it, but it's true, right? We need that common goal, that shared vision and purpose. Just like the Mafia. Clear.
Absolutely.
But look, I want you guys to think about this. If, you know, a lot of you said you're a part of many different communities, right? 5, 10, 20. What are your other communities doing to make you have that sense of belonging and the shared vision and purpose? How do you bring that into work, right? Like, there's typically, I know, you know, the different communities I'm part of, some of them are more formal, right? Where we have that working agreement, rules of engagement. You know, back in the day, one of my caving clubs, we had like Robert's Rules of Order, you know, sorry, that ages me. People probably don't even know what that is, but you know, very kind of strict rules, how to have meetings and who's taking minutes and all those things. But so how do you leverage the joy and the goodness you feel in your communities outside of the office? How do we bring that inside the office? So, and because there's many different things. So, you know, the sense of belonging, I think, again, I just think it's so important. I would, you know, ANZ, it's, you know, it's a massive organization. There's thousands of people that are part of it, but you can do it, you know, and I've done it. I've done pockets, and that's sort of, it's a slow roll, but it's slowly working, you know, and it's just the attitude you bring, and you just got to keep trying. So I'm going to keep trying.
Cool.
Hi, Jason here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a thought, or maybe a question as well. So yeah, so if you're meeting your community in person, you know, that is a different dynamic, right? But nowadays, like if you look at it, a lot of communities are online. Like even the project team that you may work in, like, you know, the last project which I did, like we had people from 6 different locations, and you know, so we were, you know, I mean, the only way in which we come together is online. So how do you build communities when it's purely online? Like you don't have a chance to, you know, meet them in person.
So Justin, how do you start those meetings?
Yeah, I mean, we had, you know, very specific meetings, like, you know, based on agenda. So we went with that. But I think the BA team, like, you know, within those meetings, we had other catch-ups where we used to catch up informally as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, look, I always start meetings with a connector. So there's many different ways. There's the online tools or whatever, but I have these cards. Let me see if I can pull it out here. I have these little, like, random cards are called get to know you cards. And it's just these random questions like, what's your favorite condiment? What's your favorite sauce? Oh, how much time do you spend on your personal devices, right? So always start your meeting with a connector and make it personal, make it human. And then, yeah, virtual coffees, virtual wine is better, I would say, but, or beer, whatever your thing is. You have to make time to do it, and also celebrate. Like if you're a project team
Yeah,
You can do it. I believe in you, Jessen. You can.
Thanks, Beth.
Gareth, is your heart rate coming down? Are you good?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm done now for the day. Thank you. Well, for the morning.
What an inspiration.
Cool. Brings the multitasking, the definition of multitasking, and male multitasking too. That's even more impressive.
So it's called habit stacking. I'm going to put, I took a few pictures, so I'll tag Business Agility and this talk. I loved it, by the way, Beth. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, if you're short of time, how can you stack two things together and get the reward from one thing and do another?
I know what you mean. It's a good idea. Very good idea.
We all do that. Nice. Any other questions, team? Again, I really appreciate you joining and giving me the opportunity again to give this talk. So, and I'm happy to get feedback, please. If there's something that didn't resonate or something I could zhuzh up, please. I trust this community, and I really, really appreciate you guys. So.
Right, I think we'll close it off at that point. So, but thanks, Beth. That was fantastic. As usual, I had some of you had the JFAC talk. I didn't go to that, but I had the privilege of listening to the podcast that you did with Bianca, and that was, you know, I found that really illuminating. And again, second time round, just as good. So it was interesting. One of your comments around about painting. I heard you paint houses. That was actually my first job, but no one actually.
No one died?
I probably got asked that a few times if I painted houses, but I never knew what it meant was. So there you go. I've got a multi-skilled even more.
Now you know.
Now you know.
I wouldn't put that on your LinkedIn profile, but you know.
Yeah, I paint houses, so don't mess with me. Anyway, thanks you all. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Sure, like me, you found that fantastic session. We have recorded it. And so we will make the recording available. So if you want to hear it again for the third time, or share it with any of your colleagues to bring joy to your communities, I think the more of this sort of message that gets around, the better. So thanks for sharing it, Beth. Thanks for being part of this community and all the communities that you're on. So we appreciate you, and we're glad you're part of our community.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you, team. Have a good weekend.